Hello there, this is the voice of Stewart Pearce, and welcome to Deep Dialogues, a series of 12 remarkable conversations that I'm having with male soul stewards from all over the world, these extraordinary men who are transmitting unconditional love, empathy, and vast waves of spiritual intelligence, encouraging us, inspiring us, enthusing us into living a new level of living, and thereby creating a brave new world. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're tuning in, it is 2029 in London, which means it's 3:30 or 3:29 is on the Eastern Seaboard and 12:29 on the Pacific coastline. We're just getting ready for kickoff. I'm sitting here with my wonderful friend Ron Damico, who I'm so proud to be introducing to you all. And for those of you who are tuning in, welcome, welcome. It's great to have you here. So forgive us. Ladies and gentlemen, hello, Yasmin. Now, Yasmin, I think you know Ron. Yasmin, yeah. Do you remember Yasmin, Ron?
I do.
This wonderful, American citizen, but formerly from Iran, who is now in Washington. Yasmin, welcome, 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 welcome. And Sarah, wonderful, hello from Eugene. Oh, wow, people from all over the United States. I find this very exciting, you know, this instantaneous location. I think we're live. I'll just wait for a moment or two, just to see if anybody else is going to tune in. Hello, everybody. Hello. And otherwise, we can just start and people will, gain momentum as they come in. We're absolutely on time today, generally speaking. It's just a little bit delayed by 2 or 3 minutes, largely as a result of the fact that Zoom as a wonderful portal is being used at this time in Europe because it's 8:30. Hi, Melinda from New York. Wonderful. We love to have a little bit of New York energy. Zoom is being used so extensively by people to communicate via the cyber network that it becomes overweighed at this time, which is interesting. So sometimes it takes, hello there from Colombia, Lenis Maria, wonderful to see you. I think people are coming in, so I think we should start. Okay. And what I can easily do as people arrive is just to mention who you are a little bit more formally as we go through, rather like a commercial break or something. So for those of you who are here, welcome, 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 welcome. And of course, a very, very special welcome on your behalf to the wonderful Ron Damico, whom I'm just going to give you a little bit of idea about because I have his bio in front of me. Ron and I have known each other for the last 7 years, and Ron's based in Connecticut at the moment in the US, and he's been there for some time, and with a very, very meaningful and multi-dimensional healing center. So Ron is a transformational catalyst, and that is not said lightly. He works as an intuitive healer and a spiritual architect of a new form of human consciousness. This means that Ron is a master mentor and way shower that has guided people through personal and collective healing for way over 20 years. Sincere and compassionate, Ron uses a technique that is highly unique, a form of energy healing aligned with all of his skills as a medical intuitive, which awakens spirit within his clients to bring about profound changes, particularly in relation to reconnecting with source energy. Working with Ron in any capacity means that you will release long-held physical and metaphysical healing holding points, allowing you to once again live a fully integrated balance, a life full of pronounced well-being, joy, and abundant celebration. And I'll be mentioning Ron's contact details later so that you can all tune in for a session. So welcome, 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 all you wonderful people. So Ron, it's just an absolute joy to have you here sitting in front of me, but in this slightly more formal context. And other than workshop, this is the first time that we've done this online, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. And I'm so looking forward to doing this with you.
Oh, bless you, bless you. I mean, I suddenly feel a prophecy coming on. I think this is the first of many.
I totally agree. I
Yes.
have been sitting with this for a good many days as of late.
We've titled the entry point for this unique
Mhm.
conversation, this deep dialogue, The
Yes.
Becoming, which is a very alluring title.
Mhm.
The Becoming, question mark? What do you feel the becoming is?
It's very interesting. I love playing with these things because everything is a play on words for me, but it's the point of origin of where we're coming from that matters the most. The becoming, in the way that I work with it and look at it, is it's our ability to take the essence of our spirit self and bring it into and through fully through the physiology to animate the physiology, creating a combined or a unified will within. Most of humanity lives with a split will. We have what we call the egoic self or the pain body, some people call it, and then we have the spirit will. That wedge has been catamount to catastrophe over the years, over the centuries. And we're at a point where we can no longer live with that kind of a schism. And the becoming is when an individual begins to recognize there is more to them than just the physical world that they define themselves through. This is a process of opening yourself up and moving into the direction of, with consistency and great depth of will and love and passion and compassion for self, to awaken to the very fabric of who you are and live that in every breath as every breath. And as we move into that, the becoming is when we literally begin to live the essence of heaven on earth. You know, we talk about the speed of thought. It's the speed at which thought is created. It's even faster than that. It's the speed of creation. It's the instantaneous state of being that recognizes the cosmic nature of what we are, that unified self, that unity consciousness, as I heard you speaking of with Emmanuel, I believe, you know, and it's the becoming is that process of going from where we are to what we are going to become, what we can become, and how we choose to live in every single moment as we open up that life cycle.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And so the becoming is really, in addition to what you've just said very beautifully, my lens gives me the possibility of seeing it as being a unique point of trajectory and a unique point of evolution that we are given and that we are craving or yearning for at this time. We are given by the finalization of cosmic cycle and the beginning of a new cosmic cycle. So we know that this is a very unique window of opportunity in the life of the galaxy, in the life of the multiverse. And so we Homo sapien are gaining the intelligence, sapien meaning intelligence, to fully embody the uniqueness of what it is to be a spiritual being having human experience, that equation that we so often hear about. So that we're moving on to a level of embodied wisdom,
Yes.
which takes us into the official capacity of Homo noeticus. So we move from Homo sapien into noeticus, intending wise knowledge. So we move just from the operational intelligence into wise knowledge, which means that we don't have to do, but so much of the vibrational frequency is received from the light to awaken cells where all of the information is anyway. As we both know, learning is a remembering. And then, if I may say, I feel that what will happen is that we'll move on to another trajectory, which is the Homo luminous,
Yes.
which has already precursed in many ways at this time because so many people are talking about human angels.
Mhm.
And, and I always say, no, no, humans are humans and angels are angels. But what we're doing is we're borrowing the characteristics of what angelic energy is, these extraordinary light beings. So yes, the becoming is extraordinary. And of course, isn't it interesting that we should create the catastrophe of COVID-19 and then the precipitating features such as economic uncertainty, the geopolitical climate being so unstable,
Yep.
particularly in the United States, but it's happening in this part of the world as well, particularly on this island. For those of you who don't know, I'm in the United Kingdom at the moment. Not that I necessarily wish to, but all the doorways into the US are closed at the moment. So living in this extraordinary time, do you have any notion of when the becoming, because obviously the becoming is a stretched imperative, isn't it? It's not happening this minute. It's actually over a period of time, a period of cosmic time. But evidently, these features within our consciousness, COVID-19, which eventually will come to a point of diminishment, economic uncertainty that is leading to a greater evaluation of the nature of money and the way that we actually review wealth or worth or am I good enough? And the November election. I mean, do you have any feelings about, because they're particularly hitting your nation?
Well, it's fascinating because the COVID and the pandemic, as it struck the entire planet, one of the things that became very apparent to me was as we moved further and further into it, it became very clear that we are beginning to move through the process of releasing primitive dynamics, survival mechanism. Survival mechanism was a very important feature of humanity to make it from where it was to where it is. Well, we have already shown ourselves at this point with 7+ billion people on the planet, we don't have an issue with survival. Now it's how do we thrive? But in order to move into the dynamic of thriving, we have to release all of the different systems, and you brought them up. All the different systems that are in place are based in survival dynamics. And what we're evolving to when we talk about the becoming is we are moving into a way of being that is about how do we take the essence of our ability to thrive and live evolutionary existences? How do we bring that into form? Now, the pandemic has helped us see where our fear patterns are. It has helped us see what it is that we are holding, what is we are resisting, and what it is that we wish to be free from. So now what we have to make the decision of is, are we going to step into survival to make this through? Or are we going to step away from that dynamic, heal the residue of what's there, and then begin to engage a life of thrive? And really beginning to initiate, you talked about initiation over time. For as long as I've known you, it's an initiation. We're stepping into that state of another level of initiation for a lot of people. And it's the initiation into the luminescent body, that luminous being, because we must open up to release the density, okay, the heaviness, the gravitas. All right. I love the term gravity because we look at everything from a grave perspective. And that weightedness keeps us in survival. And with everything we've been seeing, what I've been noticing for myself, and I've been seeing it in some other people, they have been using the heaviness of what's there to jettison themselves through what they still carry that is heavy. So it's used almost like a fuel source to rocket out of what you've been stuck in as an individual, to come out the other side and begin to feel themselves outside of the gravitational field and pull of the collective dynamic of this three-dimensional reality. So we can begin to see it from those higher vantage points, that multidimensional reality that exists, that we are actually designed to exist as. And everything we're playing with right now is unraveling all of the different ways that we have felt contained so that we can begin to feel our ability to breathe, And breathing is that exchange. It's the essence of every relationship. It's a breath. Every relationship we breathe in. When we get into these multidimensional dynamics, we must breathe as one. We must allow ourselves to know our innate rhythm and cycle and how that is part of the collective rhythmic cyclical dynamic. Like you had said, the cosmos is in the process of going through a significant transformation, that this earth is saying, we need you to be part of the dynamic. The universe is not going to be able to transform with anybody or anything lingering behind.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on here. It's beautiful.
I just love listening to you.
Oh, you are so
and
sweet.
I'm being reminded, because everybody, you wonderful people tuning in, Ron and I have worked together, and it's very rare, I think, for him and for I to find someone that one can share with, where the energy conversation is so co-creative because it exists on a multiplicitous level. So hearing you speak, and you're triggering things in me which I'm thinking, wow, yeah, I'd never thought of that, or if I haven't thought about it for a long time. And as you speak, therefore, there's an excitement in what you're saying. A vast corridor of light opened for me between you and I. There you are, 2,500, 3,000 miles away. A vast corridor of light opened, in the recognition, in the honoring, in the accomplishment of the degrees that you're describing for us all, for the people who are listening in. It's deeply, this is what I was always hoping that deep dialogues would be, that it would be causative and going deep into what consciousness is all about at this time. Anyway, so I just wanted to celebrate that and you. In the meantime, there are some major seismic stress features, and we know what they are. We don't necessarily need to enumerate them unless you want to synthesize them in some way. What I'm really interested in is what you see as being the developments. If we're no longer surviving, we're moving into the field of thriving, we're moving into the pleasure body. What are the major features? What are the major beacons that we're heading towards?
Wow, this is big. This is why I love doing things of this nature with you. You just the same. You tap into some of the most amazing ideas and potentialities that will benefit in being expressed. And the thing that I look at is finally creating a beautifully harmonious dance of the masculine and the feminine within. This is so far beyond a male body or a female body. This is about that unification within whatever body form you happen to have. And feeling what that dance truly is. Because everything we're doing right now is showing the extreme divisive nature of what we've been living in for so many centuries. And now we're being shown, if this is what we want for ourselves, are we willing to leave that behind? Are we willing to heal what it is that created that rift? And if we are, which more and more of us are, we begin to recognize that it is not about whether the masculine is on top or the female is on top. It's how do they resonate together? When will we recognize, and this is what we're stepping into, when will we allow ourselves to feel that if I'm going to bring the beauty of my feminine essence forward, I must recognize that the masculine is holding the footing for which she is standing on and delivering her message and her way of being. And the opposite occurs. If the masculine is coming forth, the feminine is holding the foundation for the masculine to be able to be everything that he can be. But by being that, it brings the best self forward, because we are alienating and isolating nothing. We are doing it with the utmost reverence and regard for the dualistic dynamic of life. The masculine and the feminine is nothing more than part of the dualistic dance. We play with the light and dark. It is a dualistic dance. Where are we? And this is what I think is important, is Where are we with the intent of our action as to why we are bringing forth an action with light or why we are bringing an action forth with darkness, whether it's positive or negative? And if it comes through with a negative lean, well, why would that be a bad thing? You know, we perceive negative as such a negative thing. But if we didn't have negative, we wouldn't exist. We need the dance of all of it. And that's what we're moving into right now. We're releasing the preference of one over to the honoring of both and how they relate with each other. And then our ability to marry the two and then bring them forth with grace and ease, and recognizing that the foundation that we must set on is peace. Because peace is, for me, it's that neutral space of all possibility and potential. And then we gain clarity with our intent, and we go into what I love calling that space of no thing. You know, when you go into that dark space, that void we talk about so much, you know, as you go into that space of no thing, where the potentiality for everything exists, and the intent begins to gather up what it needs as it begins to make it manifest and then birth. And then we go through the process of the experience of that creation, the birthing process, the offering it, people's response and relationship with it, the experience there. And then we go in, we pull ourselves inward, and we honor what our experience was. And then we gain clarity of who we are now. We evolve to that next state. And then we begin the process of bringing ourselves forth all over again. And all that happens faster than we can snap our fingers. But that's the process of what we need to step into. At first, we may need to step into it consciously to own every instance of presence. And as we own those instances of presence, we become so clear, so cognizant that there is no gap between the moment of intent and the moment of creation. It reminds me of a time, God, it had to be 12, 15 years ago. I was talking about the very dynamic of manifestation, and I had my hand out and I was talking about it. And I started noticing particles starting to form my hand. Scared me to death. I didn't know what to do with it because I didn't even understand what was happening as I was talking about it. But it helped me to realize what we are. And here I am 15 years later, looking at this now going, oh, so that's what it was all about.
It was a prophecy.
Absolutely.
Startled you into life rather than scared you to death. Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful figurative speaking.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are joining us, you know, somebody called Francis White is here. Do you recognize that name?
Yes, I do, dear Francis.
It's wonderful seeing all these people. So those of you who are tuning in, Alex, welcome, welcome. Francis, Louisa, Katie, all wonderful people. Thank you for joining us. I just want to reintroduce you, if you didn't hear at the beginning, to this wonderful, wonderful healer who is one of the most outstanding healers that I've had the fortune, great fortune, to meet over the last 25 years, and also to experience a healing from. Because I remember when Ron and I first met, and we were engaged in a co-creative project at his healing center in Connecticut, I said to him, would you give me a session? And he gave me a session. Then, of course, you know, I gave him a session. So we did that wonderful swapsy thing. And it was the most extraordinary experience. A level of gracious, collaborative, intergalactic playing of physical and metaphysical energies. I mean, literally, although Ron was sitting about 7 feet away from me, as he worked on my body, I was sitting up, I wasn't lying down. It was almost as though, well, it was, that the whole of my field was being reorganized, but in a sweet, loving, immensely tactile way. Anyway, so you can see he's absolutely stunning. And here we are having this unique conversation about the becoming. So welcome, Laura. Good to see you, Claire. So taking up that point, the vastness of what you were talking about is an extraordinary mind field of consciousness. I wonder if you could perhaps just review what you've shared with us into maybe 3 points of synthesis so that we just have lodestones or signposts of what you're describing, because it's vast, you know, and the way that you describe it is highly unique in my perception.
If I were going to make it as simple as possible, we're stepping into a process of living a life in its totality, of recognizing that we are creative beings from beginning to end. Mm. We are the Alpha and the Omega. Mm. And we start with a clarity of intent. One thing I find that is very helpful and also important is we focus as much as we can on getting as clear as possible in the intent. It's purifying that intent. Mm. It's taking our intent, and I love using this terminology, it's taking this intent and placing it on the altar before the essence of God, if you will, whatever you wish to call it. You place it there and you say, this is my intent. And through the placement of this, you gain the opportunity to see with clarity and an absolute unconditional love and acceptance of yourself in the process of where your intent can be clarified to the best of your ability at any given point, because there is no judgment within this space. So the intent is just the best that you can pull forth what you wish to bring into form, whatever you wish to make manifest. You place it there, you begin to feel it. Through the acknowledgement that this is what you wish to become through experience, you begin to breathe it into form through the way that you begin to see yourself. So as you breathe it in, know that it is you. As you begin to settle in to know the intent is you, you begin to feel your biology line up with it. Not everybody gets that right at the beginning, but with greater practice, you begin to feel the whole of your being align with that. And to make it as simple as possible, just visualize or feel the unification of your spirit and your form. You know, I like seeing it come together this way, or as people like to do, is you feel it as your spirit orb around your biology. And you allow them to align. Okay, it's no different than sun, moon, earth, moon. It's that type of alignment. Is you just bring it into that pristine state of perfected acceptance. Mm. And as we settle into that, you breathe that into form through the way that you are. And as you do, you've just made manifest the intent. Mm. It may not form in matter as we understand it, but it has formed in matter as you matter and are matter. So it's that dance of realizing that when you set the intent to have abundance, you are aligning in such a way that you are saying, where I am not that, what must I release and what must I awaken in order to become that? So the desire to clarify the intent at the altar, breathe that into your cells, allow your cells and your spirit to unify. And then once that you feel that unification, you breathe yourself into animation as that unified intent. And then everything you do in your life begins to make that manifest through every action. You know, it's everything that I'm doing with you and I've ever done with you. It's why I love working with you, is you are so clear on your intent. And whenever we have any kind of a dialogue, you bring it forth, and it is very easy just to connect, commune, and bring it forth from that perspective. So if we're going to talk about intent, you know, becoming, it's that. It's clarification of intent, it's embodiment of intent, and then it's putting the intent into action.
And of course, with the aspect that you were sharing with us at the beginning, that the period of survival is now released. And what we're doing is moving on to a much higher vibrational field, which is that of thriving. The notion of thriving brings such a wellspring of joy from the very core of our beings, that the intention that you're speaking of, that is placed on the altar where all things are altered, becomes evoked through the desire, the yearning, the absolute thrill of what the potential creation will be, thereby time wrinkles or is startled, the space-time continuum distorts, and something begins to happen. I mean, I feel that that's what you were talking about when you were beginning to see the particles, because I
Right.
can remember years and years and years ago working in the United Kingdom with a very remarkable person who was a profound teacher of mine and is now a great friend. Who is very remarkable, you know, who was born with the gift of being able to produce oil spontaneously from
Oh,
his
yeah.
hand,
Yeah.
rather like producing vibhuti if it were, you know, a sacred avatar from the East, and other things. And we would do physical phenomenon workshops where we would bend spoons and move compasses through thought and not through movement, lift tables, you know, ectoplasmic, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that he did was to actually allow the entire room to spin through his own processes. And so we watched it spinning. It was quite fascinating. And it is startling to begin with, but it's also immense. At least the inner child comes out to play. I feel, I feel in my heart is immensely warmed by it. So actually what you're sharing with us is the intelligence that lies within our cells. We know that we have over 50 trillion cells in our bodies and all the subatomic particles that have actually been conditioned to exist in form of divine and mundane, the supernal spirit and also the effective survival human.
Yeah.
And we know that we've been on this planet effectively for over 200,000 years. And here we are beginning to move into a completely different ratio of experience, where it seems that some of the constituent parts are empathy, sympathy, and compassion for self, and thence for other. So we begin to see that we're all in this together, that unity consciousness is sparking this. Would you, I mean, I see you nodding, you would agree with what
Oh,
I'm
very much
saying?
so. Very much so, because the dynamic, in order to be able to bring yourself forth in this fashion, there you must have a level of self-acceptance, compassion, understanding, and empathy for yourself and your life and what you've been.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it becomes incredibly difficult to birth the purity of what you have the ability to be.
Mm, mm,
You know, so this is the dance that we're engaging in.
yeah.
And you know, when we talk about this process, you mentioned mundane. If we were to just focus on that unified state of consciousness in every mundane task, and I just mundane to me is brushing your teeth,
Yeah.
you know, making your meals,
Yeah.
very simple day in and day out tasks that are self-governing, self-supportive tasks. If we were to align ourselves with the intent to be embodied of our spirit essence and live that through the action of that mundane, and every time we stay present with that with every breath, and before we went to the next, we realign, we recommitted to the intent, and then we move into the next.
Mm,
If we were to do that day in and day out, as we got to the more complicated things or the complex dynamics, and they're two different things, complicated and complex. But if we were to step into them, we now have the awareness and the experience of how to be our unified self. So when the difficult scenarios occur, we can breathe ourselves into unity and we can address that situation from that unity consciousness, that unified presence. Then we can bring everything we are. We bring our love, our compassion, our understanding. And like we were talking about earlier, you also look at something, and if it is of a destructive nature, if you will, or a destabilizing and distorting nature, you see it for what it is, and you just say, this will not happen in this space. There's no condemnation, there's no judgment. It's just an acknowledgement that this doesn't really have a place here. But I see who you really are behind that. Would you mind bringing that out? Because that's who I want to meet. What you just presented, I can work with, but I'd much rather meet with that because that is enticing. And if we have that kind of stability and we have that level of presence, we can do that. And if somebody wants to be offended, they're going to be offended. But we diminish the possibility of that occurring because we're so present and accepting them for who they are, not what they present. And that changes things quite significantly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, wow, these are such extraordinary concepts, and I'm hoping that everybody's feeling that actually what Ron's encompassing is not just an intellectual definition, but actually a journey into the very deep cosmology of our physical presence, that this is all a highly physical process. I mean, for example, that you're evoking in this moment is resonating in other dimensions in our human experience, isn't it? Those
Yes.
of us that are aware, the practice of mindfulness,
Yes.
how this word is taking on. When, of course, for us, what this means is that we're aware of every holy instant, that we're completely present in each holy instant. So
Right.
how do we be present? And this is a sensual, a sensory, and a physiological process. For me, it is for you as well, isn't
It,
it?
it very much is, because we're talking about this, and this is one of the reasons why I love engaging in anything with you. You operate like I do outside of linear progressive time. We live within it, we work within it, but where we operate is more from what I call a timeless space, where it's about timing as opposed to linear progressive. It's the intent creates the blueprint that brings forth everything and anything that is required to make manifest who we wish to be in that instance. And when I talk about it, yes, I'm using an awful lot of terminology that can be deemed intellectual, which it is. But when I'm engaging it, I'm feeling and working with the dynamic of its essence simultaneously. So an individual can begin to feel it, even if you can't make sense of it. Your system is resonating with it to the degree that it can in that moment. But these conversations, and again, why I love doing this with you, it's to me, and what I do with it is I set these little GPS locators out there when I do this. When we talk about it, it's like, okay, this is a truth as I understand it and experience it to be right now. Once we engage it, it activates that GPS in people. And then if they so choose that destination, they will begin to experience themselves step by step, moving in that direction to their becoming or their embodiment or their awakening to it, whatever we want to use for terminology. So everything that this is, it's when you hear this, can you feel yourself just being drawn to that part of you that wants to awaken to this, to become this? So it's not just part of you, but it's all of you. It's the entirety of your being resonates and aligns as it. And that's what this is all about.
So the becoming, as you describe it, for me, coasting, surfing with what you just, all that you've just said, is for me a vital recognition of the fact that I am I I do not have a soul within me. I am within soul.
Yes.
And that as I am within soul with you, with all of us, you're drawing on. It's almost as though you're gathering light as a way shower, and the light becomes the notion or the construct or the concept that you're experiencing and expressing, but actually you're just simply scooping it up. I hope people can feel this. This is very much to do with the metaphoric consciousness. And this is a very significant, and thus far, in all of the immensely excellent deep dialogues that I've had, we haven't quite got to this point. You and I are primed because we've had many conversations over the years. But I wonder if this would be a useful moment to evoke a practice just for 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes max, where
Sure.
everybody can experience. Would you like to lead us through? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Oh, absolutely.
if you feel
Absolutely.
it's, yeah,
Sure.
do
I
that.
would love that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think that would be really cool. I mean, lots of wonderful people tuning in. For those of you who are unfamiliar, this is the amazing Ron Damico, who's just going to take us through a process. So thank you. People coming in from Cape Town in South Africa, from Colorado. I mean, all the C's are here. Okay. So what's going to happen is that Ron will take us through a process. We'll just have a moment or two of recovery when he's thus done. And then what will happen is that he and I will mention one or two other features that we wish to discuss with you, but then we'll go into Q&A so you can actually ask questions. But be with us right now. Don't start thinking about your questions already. You probably already have them stashed away. So bless you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right, let's begin by taking a nice, deep, unifying breath in as we draw in the raw, pure essence of our divine nature, breathing it into our chest cavities, feeling it expand from the heart out into the lungs, into the ribs, sternum, and spine. Feeling the different tissues in the body, feeling their uniqueness. But as we breathe and we settle, we very quickly go beyond the physiology to see the beauty, the grace, and the essence of our soul, our spirit, our true nature. Every time we breathe, we're breathing in the full and pure essence of all that we are as it ignites our atomic structures, engaging our cells in the creation of them so they become a radiant, luminescent expression of the vibrance and vitality that is our true nature. As we take another deep, expansive breath in, we feel our eternal nature. We feel it through our brains, the spinal cord, all the nerve branches, as it moves in to all the different organs, glands, different tissues, cells, as it begins to move through the meridian lines, expanding into all of the chakras. Just be aware of them as a global viewpoint, into the auric field, into the bioplasmic field, torus, and all of the other fields as it expands in to our personal hologram, our spirit essence. And as we feel that spirit essence, we begin to notice that we're not alone in this space. We begin to feel each other. We begin to feel all of the other unique yet unified souls as a presence in the eternally expansive ocean that is this universe, as it expands out into the cosmos, into the essence of what people would call God or pure source. As we feel the expansive, ever-evolving, eternally embracing, loving, nourishing, rich in potential and possibility to bring forth our ability to live our eternal nature. Feeling and breathing in the passion to be. So we allow ourselves to take a deep, nurturing, and embracing breath in as we settle into this space as our truth, whatever it is for each and every one of you. Knowing that with every breath, you can choose to align as this. Remembering your nature, your essence, and allowing that to animate your life. And as we do this, we live through the consciousness of thriving and co-creative elevation to an ever-evolving state of presence as humans expressing their spirit selves in a world that eventually will be of the pure nature of who we are in form. And as you're ready, just take a nice and deep breath in as you begin to feel your body once again. Notice the sounds in the room, light behind your eyelids, clothing on your body, surface you're resting on. Begin to animate your system when you're ready. You can open your eyes and focus on an inanimate object to bring yourself into this moment in time, feeling yourself more aligned, more awakened, and more of your true nature.
Wow. If I started to share with what I was seeing, experiencing, we'd be here for the next 5 hours more, possibly all night, as we're in nighttime here. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was profound. I hope you got it, everybody. How are we doing for time? Okay, good. Okay, so a lot of really, really interesting awarenesses for people. Jackie, who I know is in the United Kingdom, is feeling the whole of her awareness being pulled out of me into we. There are wonderful people tuning in from Central Europe, from Italy. Alex, dear Alex, who's in the United Kingdom, was just saying what a lovely practice that is. So ladies and gentlemen, whilst you come through this process and back into our conversation, Yasmina saying, wow, is right. Maybe there are questions that are coming through. Monica, welcome from Romania. Questions coming through that you may want to ask Ron. We're creating a brave new world. And in those moments, there's such a cellular communion with the richness of what the divine wellspring is, full of unconditional love, that it feels that we're literally being informed within rather than engaging in the need to create without what this brave new world is. And as a result of that, I mean, particularly for you guys in the United States, because you are looking at the next 2 months of a race towards, what can one describe it? You know, I suppose in graphic terms, it's a geopolitical seismic shift.
Yeah.
And at the moment, we don't really know. We know in our hearts which way we wish it to go, but how will the American people vote? And will there be another, what's the official term? Not an agreement, but another term of office for Mr. Trump. which is going to bring about even more division. And even in those moments, as we were engaging, the reality of that begins to just simply evaporate.
Exactly.
So that the outer creation, which is important for us,
Absolutely.
is operated and maintained by the way that the inner visioning takes place.
Right. And that's one of the things that why I ask people to come together as groups.
Yeah.
Clarify your intent. It's not to conquer anything. It's not to beat anything or defeat anything. It's to hold the integrity and the essence of what we know we are and we would love to experience as a collective.
Mm.
You know, when what we wish to become creates nothing but a higher opportunity for everybody to keep elevating, how could it be wrong? You know, when something we're doing, and I love this because everything we've been going through for the past 4 years, we've been building up to it. But the past 4 years have been, who do we want to be? How do we choose to see ourselves? You know, when we had the last president who was in, Obama, he was playing with and engaging in the unification process. He was working within a system that was still very divisive. Well, we've now said that we want to see who we're not because we're really scared of what he was presenting us with. So now we're seeing what we carry. We're seeing the deepest pains of why we rejected all of the opportunities for things to come together. And now we need to make a decision. And the decision is nothing more than, do we wish to be unified at this point? Or do we wish to continue surviving? And this is all I ask people to do. At the deepest recesses of who you are, whether you can see it being able to happen right now or not, whether you can see that you have the courage to walk into what you need to and walk away from what you need to, that isn't as important as the will to know that you want this to become. Because if we can create the momentum and enough people come together, which is what we're doing, that's why we're doing this, why you're doing your deep dialogue, you're providing opportunities for people to get to know who they truly are. And as we do that, then we step into these situations, and it's not about which individual, it's what essence are we wishing to support. Does the person happen to be representative of it, or maybe holding a little bit of the framework around what we wish? I hope so. But I'm really clear on what isn't working for me, because every time I sit with what we're living right now, that's not me. So I know it's not working. So I know that this is more of what I am, but that's still not it. But there are facets in there. Yeah, I can live and work with that. And that's all we have to focus on. And if we can feel that inside, then we can begin to move in that direction.
I was very aware, this is beautiful. Thank you for the deduction. I was very aware when Mr. Obama came into office, and it was celebrated by thousands and thousands, millions of people in Chicago, because that was his home seat.
Yeah.
But as I watched, because I was there, and as I watched, I was actually invited by a client of mine who worked for him, who worked for Mr. Obama. So I was on the platform, probably about 25 or 30 feet away from him. I was aware that when he spoke, I could see the thousands of people in front of us, and their eighth chakra was switching on, the universal heart chakra, which of course is unity consciousness, and all of his grace, all of his wisdom, all of his discerning but non-judgmental policy making, and the way that he always showed us grace, even though we know he was constantly being pilloried by the Republicans for being black, etc., etc. All of those factors, that he always just continuously continued spinning. And so I have an idea, which I don't necessarily want you to comment on it now, but it might be interesting to create a thesis of, well, if that was the case, and that's legitimate, what chakras were being spun by Mr. Trump? And what chakras do we feel need to be moved into consideration for future space as we move into the latter part of this year, and indeed the beginning of next year when the new administration begins?
Yeah.
Interesting to do that. Anyway, so well, I hope you're getting all of this, ladies and gentlemen. Any questions? Life-changing. Thank you. Remembering your nature, your essence, and allow that to animate your life. May I say, I love you. Thank you, Melinda. We're loved. We love being loved. So that's really gratifying and highly pleasurable. Any questions? Tracy, do you have a question? Anybody coming up? Lisa, thank you. When do you stand in a place of holding love and acceptance, or stand in a place of finding your voice and sharing with the intent of loving?
Every minute that you there's no other answer. But that's also the most difficult thing for people to do.
You hit it on the nail. That's exactly what I was thinking.
It's a great question, but it only has one answer. It really does. Yeah. But it's also the most difficult thing for people to do.
Yeah.
Because we think.
So let's just explore latitudinally. Let's explore that place. We know why it's difficult, because the doing consciousness, the survival mode has produced so much stress hormone, adrenaline and cortisol, that we're always living in the ends game rather than in the moment of means whereby. But going from surviving to thriving is spot on. Good, wonderful. How can we formulate the whole process of what it is to be present?
Simply choosing with every breath to the best of your ability. Use the breath as your centering tool, as your aligning tool, as your will to be your unified self, to literally allow the conductor, which is your soul, to conduct the orchestra that is your life. And if we can breathe and align with that, that allows us to, with ever increasing consistency, be able to live it in every moment. And again, I always say, start with the mundane. When you master that with regularity, you're going to have challenges that are going to show up, that are going to be the things that have emotional weight and importance, quote unquote, to us. But then we're going to be able to know the truth of our aligned nature in that situation, which would create disharmony. And we'll know to breathe into it. We'll begin to feel who we are, and we'll stay with every breath, with every word, we'll stay aligned as that. So that's the simplest thing we can do.
Yeah, beautiful. And so connecting with flow, because when we connect with breath, we connect with flow. And for some of us, because the ecstasy of breath, although it's something that we begin doing as soon as we gain our first independent action, and before we prepare to leave this planet, we breathe out. In between, it seems we know little about breath. So we'll leave that for now and come back to it. But if anybody wants to, I as you know, use sound, as I know Ron does as well. And I have a number of recent recordings where you can feel the flow of breath working, so that if you literally, as a sort of transaction, you use your breath in chanting the Om, you will feel the duration of the breath, and then you will feel the recovery of the breath. And once you've engaged in the ecstasy of that flow, finding yourself effortlessly going more and more and more through the out breath of the Om, you will feel yourself in a position of stillness where the whole of the cosmos speaks to you. It is that simple. A very important question comes up, of course, from a highly intelligent source, but one that is very aware of what's going on in our world, as we all are. Here we are speaking of nirvana, here we are speaking of paradise, and we know that many of our brothers and sisters are either peripheralizing that experience, trying to find it, but often in a very survival or neurotic way. And as a result of that, they're very stimulated by fear at this time. And so therefore, as you and I have discussed, intellectualize their fear by becoming engaged in the arena of conspiracy theories. How do we approach that and remain still within the trajectory, I am thriving, when havoc is happening around us?
By allowing ourselves to recognize that we are far more than our physical bodies. We are our spirit having a human experience. If we can keep that awareness active, you get to a point, and this happened for me probably 15 plus years ago. Something clicked for me where I realized I have eternity to live in whatever fashion and form I choose. If you can realize and begin, when I say realize, I mean you begin to feel it vibrating as your cells or emanating from your spirit. If you begin to recognize and feel the eminent truth that you are an eternal being, and you breathe into that, that helps shift your viewpoint of everything that's going on around you. It helps you stay so well aligned that when you hear the conspiracies, you can feel the pain, the fear, the anguish, the shame, the longing that creates it. And you can nurture that wound through your presence. And as you emanate the truth in the presence of the pain, that begins to create a field of transformation that can occur if someone wishes to allow it. Whether it's conscious or unconscious isn't as important as the fact that they don't run away from you. Or they may move away because it's a little bit too much. Or maybe they just want to stay in the bubble that they live in. But either way, if we hold the essence of that truth in the presence of it, we then know how to hold our constitutional integrity. As we hold that, then we can start having conversations, but it's not to change a person's mind. It's not to bring out anything other than holding the essence of the truth in the presence of whatever they're bringing up. And you say what you say, I say what I say. Do you want to dance or not? A tango takes two with incredible passion and precision to want to work together. And if they don't have an interest in tangoing, I bless you, I wish you well, and I'm going my way.
Mm.
You know?
Absolutely. Completely with you. I'm working with a Syrian refugee at the moment who is in his 21st year, who's a beautiful, beautiful being, who 4 years ago watched his entire family being shot in front of him. His grandparents on both mother and father side, his mother and father, and all of his siblings, there were 5, going all the way down to 9 years of age. He watched them being shot. He escaped just by hiding behind a wall that had incendiaries dropped on it, so it was only partial. But he was watching all of this happening. So he said, I was wondering if he would move into trauma zone. And what he said was that he became immensely still, where he was only aware of his breath, which then slowed down because obviously he had so much adrenaline and cortisol and dopamine pumping through him because of survival mode. But everything slowed down, and he saw their souls leaving their bodies and moved into this vast transcendental experience, and then realized in humanness that he needed to leave that scene. And a superhuman energy happened within his body where he ran from the site. And he said, I don't know how fast I was running, but I moved like grease lightning, and saw a large truck, which was beginning to rev up. I think it was owned by the militia. And so he snuck underneath and held on, and he traveled there for 9 hours, hanging onto the base into freedom. Anyway, so I just thought I'd give an X-rated story because of the immense stillness, how the breath became limitless, and as a result of that, a transcendental experience took place in the face of horror, as we face the horror of, I faced horror this weekend because, as I was telling you earlier, because I put a very rich post up, which was refusing to acknowledge QAnon as an entity, a social entity that actually would be one of light. I was suggesting that it was one of darkness, and was attacked, and somebody referred to me as being a pedophile and wanted to kill me. All of this, that level of aggression, and how I sat in the middle of that and remembered my Syrian refugee, breathed very, very deeply. So it was non-reactive. And I find myself to be a very reactive individual, but it was non-reactive. And I responded with absolute discernment in saying, this will not happen. And suddenly they all evaporated. So stillness through breath. Any other questions? Lots of wonderful people who know you, recommending you highly, and apparently you've worked with their family. How do we love all into higher light? Beautiful Wendy. Whoever, I don't know, Wendy. Which Wendy is this? Wendy Minier. How wonderful. I wonder where you are.
It's interesting. I go to what you just shared, which was a beautiful story. And a story was truth and experience. You go to that place that young man went to, of absolute stillness, because within that space you feel truth. You transcend human framework and you see things for what they truly are. And when you do, the only thing you can be is that awakened self. It's not easy. Life or death situations, it can happen or it can't. It can either make you or break you. But when we choose to let go of how we see ourselves, to align with who we really are, we begin to transcend the limitations of our mind. And then we begin to step into what I'll call that cosmic truth, that cosmic mind, that higher essence of what is. And as we surrender to that, there isn't any other way to be than that aligned self. And you can walk through and there is no forgiveness to have because you honor the experience. You're in a place of absolute honoring of everything that happened, realizing that what happened also contributed to what brought you into form. There is no experience that is ever wasted. It is only locked up in time. If we allow ourselves to settle into it and fully embrace the moment, like that young man did, because when you were talking about it, Stewart, I was ready to burst into tears, because he literally did not fight what was going on around him, nor did he fight what was going on within him. That's why he was able to go into that stillness. And what he held was beautiful. I mean, I'm forever changed just from that. And if we can find our inroad into that, you'll be able to maneuver anything.
So we need to, the key that you've given us, which is so extraordinary. I mean, you've given us many, many keys, but right at the core of it is this true recognition of cease pure survival and move into the incandescence of our divine bodies by recognizing what it is to thrive.
Yes.
And therefore we obviously need to engage in frequent meditation so that we're preparing our bodies for the stillness, so that we use the ecstasy of the breath to allow us to enter into the silence of the mindful holy instant, so that we can place all of our intentions onto the altar. And as a result of that, we can begin to feel that our bodies are preparing for an even greater experience of transcendental consciousness, where literally we slip into the oneness of all oneness, which is unity consciousness, the peace that passeth all understanding. And it's quite surprising. There are many stories that percolate through my consciousness of people that come to me and reveal, like Muhammad telling me the story of the Syrian refugee. And we're in, so evidently we're being offered invitation cards by the divine. I don't necessarily want people to manifest horror in their life, but the point is that it will be whatever it will be. Invitation cards are being given to us in the uniqueness of all these different experiences, the plethora of all these different experiences, to see if we can truly turn up to the substance of the fact that we are born of love and that the universe is a personal love letter written by God, especially for us.
Absolutely.
This has been the most extraordinary conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you from the very core of me, the bottom of my heart and the depth of my soul. People are saying that they're in tears, and thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Very deep dialogues indeed. Grave and full of gravitas, but also a great deal of levity. So, Ron, please stay where you are, but thank you, bless you. My love goes to you immensely. And I know that this is, we must do this more often. And for all of you people tuning in, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But please, Ron, stay where you are while I, just switch off all systems. And next week, ladies and gentlemen, there is somebody else coming, which I will be advertising very soon. We're getting richer and richer, and particularly, it's fascinating now having experienced 12 ladies now into the boys. Agnieszka, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.